To call on Mr. Goldman next. So, Chair recognizes Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been interesting listening to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle use phrases such as, quote, follow the science, unquote, and black letter law. Since science overwhelmingly has established that climate change is real and caused by human beings, especially oil and gas companies, I'm sure they will agree that if we are to follow the science, then we should stop denying climate change. Mr. Berry, do you agree with the Supreme Court's rationale and analysis in the Bruen decision?
So I'm not deeply familiar with it, but I directionally, what I understand, it seems to construe the Second Amendment as a robust individual right.
And would you consider it to be a strict constructionist interpretation of the Second Amendment?
My impression is that it attempts to be a faithful exploration of the original public meaning of the Second Amendment.
The original public meaning. Okay. Just so everyone is aware, the Bruen decision interpreted the Second Amendment to only allow for gun regulation that existed at the time, or could have existed in 1789, when the Second Amendment was ratified. Of course, there were no machine guns, there were no bump stocks, the list goes on as to many, many technological advances that did not exist then. But it is the original meaning. Ms. Wiley, if we're going to talk about the original meaning of the actual black letter law, was there any evidence in 1964 of pervasive discrimination against white people?
No.
So it's fair to say this Title VII was, of course, not written because to right the wrongs of discrimination against white people in 1964.
That's correct.
So if one were to use the original meaning at the time that something was ratified or enacted, then discrimination against whites would not be included as a cognizable claim under Title VII. Is that right?
No, because it is true that Title VII prevents all forms of racial discrimination. The reality of why the law was drafted and passed in the first place was because there were no protections that recognized that black people, that Native Americans, that Pacific Islanders, that other people of color who were not being protected by government from discrimination deserve to be protected by government from discrimination. Because what was happening for 100 years after the winning of a civil war to create true equal opportunity is that it was formally and constantly denied people because they were not white.
I agree with you.
So it didn't make it okay to discriminate against white people. It just made it clear you can't allow it against everyone else.
I'm making somewhat of a rhetorical point because I do agree with you that we should not have discrimination based on race. I just want to point out the hypocrisy and the convenience that folks on the other side of the aisle like to use in a cynical way black letter law and the original meaning of things when it's convenient, but not when it's not convenient. The fact of the matter is that 82% of business leaders consider diversity initiatives to be essential to their business strategy. 2% of business leaders say that these initiatives are not important. Diversity initiatives are credited with improving business performance, enhancing talent acquisition and retention, enhancing competitiveness, and fostering innovation. And 45% of business leaders said that the main reason they have diversity initiatives is to improve business performance. This is motivated by businesses, and it is demanded by consumers, just like ESD. And so if Republicans profess to be the party of deregulation and free markets, why won't you just let the market decide whether diversity and inclusion or ESD is something that the market wants? Why do you now want regulation? The fact of the matter is you want regulation because you want to go back to the white replacement theory and a time when, in 1964, we needed to pass a law to protect discrimination against people of color and underserved and marginalized groups, not against white people. And it is a shame that this entire Project 2025 includes attacks on immigrants and the expulsion of immigrants and the exclusion of immigrants who make up so much of our economy and are essential to so many aspects, both from agricultural workers to highly skilled workers with H-1B visas. And so I wish that we would have some consistency from the other side of the aisle in how we view diversity that as we approach with Project 2025, with immigration, and with our employment laws. And I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Mfume from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr.